When you have this notebook, you can actually refer back to this. Do not override stuff that you do not understand why you are overriding something. I would not suggest one by one. It's going to take you all day long. Don't ever assume. Just ask, okay? Hey y'all, glad you came. I'm Monique. Welcome or welcome back. Today, we're going to be talking all about filling prescriptions at your retail pharmacy location, okay? So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into it. All right, so first up, we're going to be talking about accuracy. So how can you be an accurate prescription filler at the filling station, okay? So I'm going to go through a list of things you can actually double check to make sure that everything is 100% correct when it gets to the pharmacist. Of course, we are all imperfect, so we're going to make mistakes, but you really want your mistakes to be minor mistakes, okay? Not major ones. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. I have my little list here because I don't want to forget. So the first thing up is to check the name of the patient and to check the name of the medication. Now, typically in a retail pharmacy, you're going to have something that goes on a bottle, like a label, a sticky label. You're going to have a leaflet. There are two different things that print out for you to fill a prescription. Always make sure those things actually line up with one another, okay? Make sure they agree. Now, your pharmacy may be different depending on where you work. You may call things differently where you work. But the point is, there's always some type of label that sticks on the bottle and some type of label that doesn't, right? So you may or may not have both, but whatever the case, just look at the name of the patient, look at the name of the medication, all right? All right, the next thing is to look at the amount. This is really important because this particular step can actually save you some steps, like literally. Because if you have a habit of thinking everything is 30, that is not correct. There are different amounts, obviously. People get 30 pills, they get 60 pills, they get 180 pills, they get 500 pills, 360 pills, whatever the case may be. Check that amount because it's going to tell you how many bottles that you need to go and take off the shelf to bring back with you to the filling station. You don't want to be wasting your time walking back and forth because you're not looking at the label before you actually go to get the medication, okay? And then sometimes, too, if you don't look at the label, you could actually send through a prescription wrong. All right, so as an example, if you have an insulin and each pen has 3 mLs of insulin in it and a whole box has 5 pens, that's 3 times 5. 3 times 5 is 15 ml. So when you're looking at your label and it says 15, you don't need 15 pens. You need one box of pens that has 3 mLs of insulin in each pen, 3 times 5. Okay, the same thing with other insulins. It may say the number 2, meaning there are 2 pens in that box that have, 0.4, 0.2, whatever the case may be. Pay attention to your insulin. Another example is going to be Lovenox. It's a blood thinner that comes in a syringe. So a lot of times that might say 0.4 or 0.8, 0.6, so on and so on. Well, on your label, you might have a number that says 4.8. So how many do you need, right? 4.8. The way you're going to figure that out is do the math backwards, okay? So 4.8 divided by 0.4 is going to give you 12 syringes, all right? I'm telling you, now if you know how to do that, you're going to be really good because you would not imagine how many people do not know how to fill Lovenox or insulin for that matter. So make sure you're keeping up with the amount. That's why it's very important to do that, all right? So the next thing on the list I want you to look at, the NDC. Now, if you watched the other video, I talked about NDCs as well. If you work in retail pharmacy, you know what I'm talking about. It is the identification number at the top of the bottle. Make sure that matches your label. Now, you're going to have a scanner at some point in this process. Before you even get to scanning, you can actually look at it yourself to make sure, right? So make sure it matches up. If it doesn't match up, then you can stop right there in that process and figure out why. Right? So that'd be the time to ask maybe someone else who's filling with you, or maybe just, another technician who may have been there longer. Hey, does this always do this? Is this always the case? Depending on what you are working with. Like if you have a robot system in your pharmacy, it may be, a glitch or something like that. Just always ask. Don't ever assume. Just ask, okay? So, yeah, check the NDC. If it's not right, then ask, okay? Or look around some more for an NDC that matches that one. If not, you're going to have to actually know how to go in and change the NDC. So that is something that while you're on the filling station, you need to know how to do that in the computer system. So learn how to use that computer system to help you know how to change the NDC to update it to the one that you actually have in your hand, the bottle in your hand. Okay, So the next thing is going to be when you're counting your pills. Now, people count in all different ways. I would not suggest one by one. It's going to take you all day long, but it depends on what you have. Typically, I count in fives. That's typically what I count in fives. However, when I have a control medication, I sometimes slow down and I count in threes. So it just depends because you want to be really accurate on your control medications, obviously, right? So when it comes to non-control medication, I count in fives and it goes pretty fast, right? But try to get to a certain speed where you're not counting by ones. Try to get you into like a 3 or 5 or maybe even 10 if you have, a low amount of medication to fill. So it just depends. It will take you some time if you have like a huge prescription to fill. You have like 360. Sometimes it can make it easier for you if the stock bottle actually has, 90 or 60 or whatever. So it kind of makes it easy for you to kind of break it open and just go ahead and put it in the bottle, the orange bottle that medication typically goes in if you don't give them the stock bottle. So you could do that. That makes it easy. But most often you are counting. So like I said, I suggest control medication, counting in threes, and then non-control, counting in fives. And even sometimes with controls, you can count in fives. Just pay attention, okay? Okie dokie. The next thing is to scan. Now, you probably have a scanning system wherever you work. It's to make sure that you have the right medication with the right label and the patient and so on, so on, and so on, right? So that's, to me, that's a robot system, if you will, that is set in stone that's really good. But there are ways to override that. But do not override stuff that you do not understand why you're overriding something. So, for example, if you are told to override something, say, I'll just override it. Ask them why. And will I always override this? Don't just override stuff because you could be doing something wrong. You can really mess something up by overriding something that you don't really understand why you're overriding. Okay, so yeah, that feature is there, but use it sparingly. And when you use it, know what you're doing. Okay. So the next thing you want to do is you want to make sure that you are putting your X on your bottles when it is opened. Why, right? Well, because it's a courtesy to others for one, and then two, it helps with inventory. It's nothing worse than like grabbing a bottle that you think is full and you think is 90 in there, and then you get back to the filling station, it's only 3 because nobody put an X on the bottle. So put X on the bottle. That way you can grab all the bottles that you need when you need them, right? I'm getting really tongue-tied here talking about bottles. So yeah. Anyway, that's the important step too, because that's annoying when people don't put X's on bottles. It really is. So make sure you put your X on your bottle, okay? If that's what you do at your pharmacy. Now, of course, you follow your policy, but most likely in most retail locations, once you open a bottle, there is a way to let others know that it has been opened, okay? All right. So when you're in the filling station, a lot of times they also expect you to answer the phone. When you answer the phone, that can slow you down. However, if you know how to do these few things, then you can work a little bit faster and get off the phone quicker. Number 1, know how to find a patient in the system. Just simple as that. Know where to put their date of birth. Okay? Know how to read their medication profile. Know how to tell them the price. Know where to find the price. Because typically they're only calling to ask you, is it ready and how much is it? And also understand rejections. We're going to get to the next part. Let's go into that part. Rejections. The most common rejections in retail pharmacy for medication not being ready are going to be a DUR, which is a medication utilization review that sometimes a technician can take care of, but most times a pharmacist will do that. Okay? And then you also have prior authorization, which is something that has to do with the insurance company. All right? And then you also have refill too soon, which means the medication cannot be filled on that particular date. And you also have something called like a will call back, or basically meaning that the patient actually needs a refill on the medication, so therefore the medication is not ready. Okay? Yeah. So those few rejections are ones that are good to know: DUR, PA, WCB, RTS. According to where you work, you may have different ones, maybe called something different, but most likely, even if it has a different name, it's the exact same meaning. Okay? So there you have it. Now, last but not least, when you go to your filling station, there are a few things I suggest that you bring with you, especially if you're new to the location, okay? Or new to the job. So the first thing is to bring you a notebook. Get you a notebook. This little handy dandy notebook will be your best friend because you will write down how to do different things in the computer while you're filling, because again, you want to be fast, right? You want to be efficient and you want to get things done. And so you don't have to ask people stuff that you've been told already over and over again, right? So when you have this notebook, you can actually refer back to this and just take good notes. It's really good for learning how to, maneuver around the computer system when it comes to inventory and things like that, how to out of stock things. If something is out of stock, like you don't have it, just like the different ways to do that. Sometimes you can get caught at the computer because you don't know what you're doing because you were showed one time or you were shown once, but you don't remember it, right? So when you're shown, if you have time, just try to jot down what they said, okay? And that brings me to the pen collection. So for me, when I am at a retail location, I always bring my assortment of pens and markers and highlighters. So I use this one sometimes, not all the time. This is a black marker that's kind of thick actually, and it's really good for like plastic bags and stuff like that. I use that more at the hospital. And then I have my highlighter for, different reasons. You never know what you might need to highlight, all right? And then I also have my Sharpie felt tip. This is a thin felt tip, and I'll try to make it focus. You can like see the tip possibly, all right? Yeah. So this one is really good for writing on labels. So when you have to like sign your initials on a label after you count a control medication, this is great for that. Matter of fact, that is what I use. So get you a Sharpie felt tip, okay? And then the next thing is a pen. You can have red, black, blue, whatever the case may be. I like to have a pen to jot down things all the time. And then I also have a black pen as well. I really love this pen. It is an S Gel by Sharpie. Love this one. It is great. And then I also have this Sharpie. Now this Sharpie is what I use to actually put X's on bottles once I open them. And you can see the difference in that size. You see, it's not felt tip. It's a little bit bigger than the felt tip. So that is my selection of pens and markers when it comes to the filling station. So those are all the tips that I have. I hope this video was really helpful. If you guys have any questions, of course, leave a comment. If you have anything you want to add, leave a comment and let me know. And I will talk to you on the next upload.